So you see these little houses and this guy falling? This is the equivalent of setting a safety net at the bottom of a cliff. By the time this guy falls this far and reaches these programs where he's qualified for them because he has it bad enough, he's basically broken. Welcome, everyone. Your presence is a gift. My name is Nemo, and today I'm going to introduce you to the work that I do, and this will be the fastest, clearest way to get the bigger picture. And my mission is to foster self-determination for as many people as possible, to make it as accessible as possible. You might be wondering, what is self-determination? Well, as follows, there are 3 universal human needs. 1 is autonomy, the ability and space to make choices over your own life. 2 is competence, the skill, the knowledge, and the wisdom to take on the challenges and the craziness of life. And 3 is interconnection, mutually supportive, respectful relationships. When you have autonomy, competence, and interconnection together, they influence each other and combine like the primary colors of empowerment, and you get a radically different way of experiencing life. This is transformative. I have lived this myself, and these maps will take you on a journey. These are my spectrums of self-determination. Here's map 1. So I'm going to go through these little squares and start to kind of visually present it to you. And you can't really see the whole map right now. I'll have to push it up as we go along, but you will definitely get the picture here. So the first is just the basics. We have a vertical axis, and this is the spectrum of self-determination. It shows how much the individual is self-determined. So the quantity and quality of your autonomy, competence, and interconnection. The horizontal dotted line is the threshold of independence, which is what the individual must cross to maintain and develop their own empowerment. Let's go to number 2. There are natural forces that push up or down on each person. Once a person passes above the threshold, they tend to keep going up. Let's go over to number 3. As people move towards the ends, their position stabilizes and their natural forces push more intensively in one direction. Moving closer to the threshold is more sensitive, fragile, and flexible. So that's representing these arrows here. So in one direction, if you get to the extreme ends, you tend to stabilize. You see this guy here is not just walking, he's sprinting. He's got so many good things going for him that even if there's bad things here and there, it's not going to stop him. And those bad things are less likely to happen. And when they do happen, they're contained within a strong foundation, so they don't get worse than they need to be. So he's going to start stabilizing the further he goes up. And likewise, if you get close to that threshold of independence from either side, there's a lot of flexibility and vulnerability here. So let's see more about that and what's going on as we go further down here. To number 4. This is the zone of transformation, this green dotted line that forms a box on either side of the threshold of independence. Here's where most people, or where people, have the most potential. Their upward and downward forces are close to equal. One force can take over, changing their direction entirely. Again, it's flexible. There's a sensitivity here. There's potential and vulnerability. So if we go over to this guy, he's falling. He's about to fall outside of the zone of transformation. So number 5, empowerment programs, represented by these little houses here, are often placed far below the zone, leaving many people to fall further down before they qualify. So you see these little houses and this guy falling? This is the equivalent of setting a safety net at the bottom of a cliff. By the time this guy falls this far and reaches these programs where he's qualified for them because he has it bad enough, he's basically broken. That's important. Pay attention to that. Now let's go over here. Number 6. People further below the threshold are more challenging to support and resource consuming. It can take exponentially more advanced programs to push upward intensively enough for the individual to reach the zone. So we've gone from above, where we had our little guys walking and running, Now till we get a guy that's falling, and way down here, this guy's not even falling, he's crawling. He has such a heavy burden on him with the weight of these problems that it's very, very difficult for him to change direction on that. So, number 7, people close to the bottom have likely been affected by long-term damage, making them the most difficult people to help. People here are more likely to damage the quality and foundation of the programs they're accepted to. So if you have a program that is taking in tons and tons of people that are falling so far down they crash into the program, and people that are crawling their way into the door, then likelihood is that these programs are going to be damaged, and it's going to be utter chaos, and they're going to fall apart. But it's not all bad news here. And I'll keep painting this picture for you as we get into map number 2. Alright, here's the second map, and this one reads from bottom to top. So we'll have to start at the bottom here. We just went over the first map, which was on the individual scale. Now we're going to level 2, which is programs. So we're going to look more in depth into these programs themselves. Here's number 1. Programs have their own magnetic forces, pulling in participants. That's all these little black arrows here coming in all directions. Programs at the bottom will drag people down, punishing empowerment and encouraging dependence. I want to make an important note here. So you imagine people coming in from all directions. When you have these programs that have these resources and potential to give things to people, that magnetic force draws people in and has a real impact on the entire map itself. It changes the nature of the magnetic forces here. So people that are coming in kind of right at the bottom here that these programs may be aiming for often have it so bad, and there are just so many burdens on them. They're so disenfranchised. They have very, very limited skills that they really can't even do anything to get into these programs. But then you also have people that are coming in, say, from this yellow zone over here, and they have some semblance of some skill, maybe some resources and some relationships, where they understand that you have to have it really bad to get into this program. So dependence and victimhood are presented as virtues. It kind of subverts meritocracy on its head. It creates this weird victimhood meritocracy. Number 2, programs close to and within the zone of transformation foster empowerment and set minimum boundaries to protect everyone's upward mobility to self-determination. So these two can be seen as opposites or in high contrast to each other. You have to understand, when you're placing your program closer to this zone of transformation, you're encountering people that are in a very special time and position in their lives. More of these people will want their empowerment and value it. Because, in a sense, people close to this area can see both directions. They can see the potential for good and empowerment and the potential for disaster. They can see their vulnerability looking both ways down this road. And it helps them, seeing both sides of that, helps them have a bigger context where they begin to see the power and value of their own empowerment. And this is where you get that transformation. It's a completely different culture. Let's keep going up. All right. Number 3, opportunities higher up present as scholarships, jobs, and leadership positions. These programs, quote-unquote programs, are often out of reach for people just starting on their journey, but support others further along. So let's get to number 4 here. Some of these positions are jobs in empowerment programs, mentoring participants at lower stages. It comes full circle. People at all levels need opportunities to pursue their own empowerment and support others. You're going to see that this builds in layers, and it's also cyclical. And that's really important, and I'll show you what that means when we get to map 3. Alright, so number 1, every program chooses their foundational values no matter where their applicants are on the map. Programs at any level can aim to foster dependence or self-determination. This might seem different from the previous map, where we suggested that programs that are lower down tend to drag people down, and programs higher up tend to foster empowerment. Now, that may be generally true as a pattern, but it's not rigid. It's not a rigid requirement. No matter where a program puts itself on the map as far as what applicants they're going to accept, they can choose to clarify, define, and refine their values. So if you want to try helping empower people that are this low down, more power to you. That's a radical thing to do. Let's move to number 2 here. Programs, groups, and community members cultivate a larger shared foundation together. This greater foundation carries the weight of all up and down forces. Increased dependence programs produce more dependence, pulling the entire community down. This is where we get into that cyclical nature. You see, it's a whole circle. Here's the community, and there's people crawling, and there's all these dependence programs, and people falling. It becomes the environment. It becomes a culture and environment of dependence and victimhood. And it grows so exponentially that anybody in this arena or who enters it is usually vastly overwhelmed. Let's go up a little further here and let's get some good news now. Number 3, effective programs develop their foundation and improve their own self-determination over time. Successful graduates of these programs benefit and give to their community. This is pretty radical here. This is one of my favorite parts of any of these maps, because this is where you connect every piece together. I'll tell you a little bit about myself and my journey, because this is important as we go along in this map. So I lived in a transitional housing program as a teenager, and it was within the zone of transformation, and I graduated it. So I was this person, and in discovering the beauty of self-determination, I wanted to support other people as well. So here I am, and it's coming full circle. Okay, number 4. The community itself can change direction. If enough programs foster empowerment, with the shared foundation will continue to improve, and the entire community gains upward mobility. This is like an opposite to this cycle below here. So you can have a downward spiral or an upward spiral, is what it really amounts to. And see, let's go back to me, this little guy here. We'll say it represents me for now. So, as I said in the previous map, after I graduated, I sort of wandered. I didn't really find any groups or environments that were like this. But if you recall in the previous map, some of the opportunities in programs higher up are jobs in empowerment programs, so it comes full circle. I ended up getting jobs in that industry, but rather than it being programs that are in here or that are tied to these communities, I ended up actually getting jobs in these programs. And that's where I discovered how shockingly opposite all of these values and the culture is to the experiences I've had. And that dichotomy, that conflict, really made me aware and set me on a journey on a very deep level that has led me to where I am today. A lot of people in my industry and in this dependence and victimhood culture are very, very resistant to what I have to say. There's something in people, you can feel this when you interact with them, that makes them cling to this victimhood and dependence cycle. And they don't want to let go of these dependence programs. And I think one of the core reasons is because deep down inside, everybody in this industry knows how overwhelming it is to try and help people that are so far below this threshold of independence. We don't really know how to do it yet, but very few people are willing to even admit that. They catch a glimpse at some point in their lives on their own journeys of people that are really far below here. We're talking refugees. We're talking people with felonies that can't get jobs or housing. We're talking about people that the average person sees that and maybe they didn't experience it, so they're shocked about something real and harsh in the world they're seeing, and they believe, I must do something about this. And so there's something in people that work in these environments, and a lot of people that are part of these environments that just is convinced that when you have people that are too far down, they will always be dependent, and there is no hope for them experiencing or developing empowerment. I believe this is false. We might not know how to do this yet, but it doesn't mean that we should destroy our entire foundation so that everyone starts to fall down and get sucked into these cycles just because we haven't learned how to help everyone yet. Now, let's go way higher up to a totally different context that many people in my old industry probably can't imagine. Number 5, high-level individuals, groups, and communities build deeper wealth based on self-determination, creating resources and strategies to empower people more difficult to help. Over time, communities produce people more capable of helping those further and further below the zone. So you remember how I said this was layered and cyclical? If we can get that upward spiral going, where we create these kinds of environments, and people here, like me, can find these groups, we can do things that are absolutely unimaginable now. And there will be those communities and those beautiful environments that produce those very high-level people. And if these people, you get even a couple of them, they're pretty rare, but if you get even 2 or 3 of them and they form a program, we're going to discover ways to help people that are a lot further down that we don't know how to yet. This is why it's so important that people be willing to see a painful reality in front of us that we don't know how to help everyone right now. And an even more dark and painful reality that there are entire cultures and cycles of programs that get people trapped in perpetual dependence, and they encourage victimhood. They develop a victimhood meritocracy. The stark contrast between these worlds is not something I can put into words until you see and experience it for yourself. And yes, being on this path requires being able to look at unimaginable tragedy and darkness and cruelty and abuse and self-corruption on a very deep level. But it also has those moments of beauty and purpose and meaning and light. And that is the transformative point. So, I invite you to join me on this path, to discover more deeply self-determination in your own life. And you can be this person. You can be the example where you can see both directions on this map, and you can see the potential and choose the direction you want to go on your path. This is the greatest game I've ever discovered to play, and I'd love nothing more than for you to join me. Thank you.